I know many years ago, Donkey used to wear blinders. I don't know if you're wearing that. Take it off and see what is progress, real progress. And look at Budget 2023 and see what it will bring for the ordinary people in their villages and communities. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Member, Mr. Cox, talk about the carbon credit, LCDS. I wish to inform the Honorable Member that Tushau's NTC from 2007, right in this building here, we passed a resolution supporting the then President, Dr. Jagdeo, to go and discuss forests. We were part of that discussion right here in this very building. 2009, when the MOU was signed, we were there. We had many discussions. We say what we would like to see. Honorable Member, perhaps you are too little to remember those things. Or you are not around, or I don't know if you live in your village, or I don't know if you communicate with your leader. We were always part, the National Tushau's Council and Tushau's were always part of the discussion. And so, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to be part of all the discussion with forest and anything that has to do with the development of indigenous peoples. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, because talking to my indigenous brothers and sisters, they said this is one of the best budget that they have heard so far. And I want to say thanks to the Honorable Minister, Dr. Ashni Singh, and his staff for the hours that they spent working on this budget. And I want to remind the House that when Dr. Ashni Singh came back, the ordinary people say, that is the man for the job. Yes. The ordinary people, the man in the street, the people who I talk with, grassroots people, they appreciate the hard work that the government ministers, Dr. Ashton Singh, and the vision of His Excellency, they understand it. And I don't think they have maths and English. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I heard the word doom and gloom. You know, it's so, I don't know what word to use, sad, hear the people, the presenter, the honorable member from the other side of the House saying that doom and gloom now under the People's Progressive Party civic government. No, sir, that is not true. That is trying to mislead the population. That is trying to mislead people. But people are not foolish. We faced 2015 to 2018, no confidence motion, doom and gloom. 2019, 2020, waiting for the results, doom and gloom. Mr. Speaker, during those years, I am not sure where the members of the opposite side, where they live, where they were, who they were talking to, but people find it difficult to put meal on the table for their children, to put 3 meals on the table for their children. Isn't that doom and gloom? So how now you coming and tell us that now doom and gloom? You do not understand what is doom and gloom? Come on. It was difficult for people to put meal on the table for their children. That is what we went through. People are wondering where the next meal coming from. But no longer they have to worry about that. Because this is a caring government, and I know you don't like to hear the word caring, but we are a caring government because we care. Because we care. And we are demonstrating how we care. So all the issue about doom and gloom and disrespect and discrimination and your agenda, Mr. Speaker, the opposition agenda is to create division, to destroy, to cause disturbance. That is the opposition agenda. You know, it is clear as day. I remember I never visited Mocha, but I read everything that is happening. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? I remember seeing a video where the former Minister of Housing said to the people in Sophia, y'all better move peacefully or else we will do what we got to do. That was not discrimination, that was not doom and gloom, that was not destruction. What was that? And then they did dismantle the people building because they were illegally occupying lands. And in like manner now, the people are illegally occupying land where there's a lot of communication back and forth, minister talking, everyone trying to move you peacefully. And now you're bringing it, you're preaching that we discriminate against them. What is your agenda? To create division, to create disturbance, to create destruction. But we would not allow that to happen. No, we would not allow that to happen. Mr. Speaker, Guyana will move forward, onward, upward. Where we ever go, we will go. The development train is moving ahead. We have a vision. And under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali, we are promoting, we will work towards a one Guyana. And I think the opposition don't like that. They don't like oneness. They don't like unity. They don't like harmony.
Honorable Member, before you continue, I took my eye off the clock and you're actually 2 minutes over the initial 15 minutes. But that's not your fault. Can someone move that the Honorable Member be given 5 minutes to conclude?
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully ask that the Honorable Member be given 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. You may continue to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to make a few points on 2023 budget. The budget that will take us forward, onward, and upward. Mr. Speaker, I would like to point out $12.4 billion to improve education infrastructure across the country. And when we said across the country, we are also talking about the hinterland communities. And so education infrastructure will be developed, enhanced in our various communities and villages. I would also like to say $3.4 billion to procure textbooks for the use of primary and secondary school. That includes our hinterland schools. Unlike what happened under the APNU AFC, when there was even no exercise books in our school, Mr. Speaker, this would not happen under our government. And here is where 2023 budget has catered to address these issues. Onward and upward, may we ever go. In strength and beauty, we will grow. Mr. Speaker, youth, I'm sorry I don't have time to go through all, but this is catered for youths, and indigenous youths will not be left out. Our facilities, we will have sporting facilities constructed in our villages. We will have better play field and facilities in our village. It has started already, Mr. Speaker, and 2023 budget will see the continuation of all these things. Mr. Speaker, I just want to point out hinterland development. Indigenous peoples, and I quote, indigenous peoples will be the forefront to directly benefit from the government's effort on climate financing, with 15% of the revenue received from the sale of carbon credit going towards investment in villages, sustainability plans produced by villages and communities. Mr. Speaker, we are involved in development program and project. And I wish to point out, we have our village plans. Many of our plans has to do with agriculture. And so we are seeing a shifting from subsistence agriculture onto commercial agriculture. We are talking about processing, food security, commercial agriculture, livestock rearing, and I can go on and on, Mr. Speaker. And budget 2023, if we look at it, and if we have the capacity to understand it, we will see how much it will bring to our hinterland people. And so we will move onward and upward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government, the People's Progressive Party civic government, under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali. We have a responsibility to the people of Guyana. And we are honored to discharge our responsibility. It is our duty to do that, because we went out there and we talked with the people. And you know what they said, Mr. Speaker, to us? I remember very well when we were out there, they say, y'all take back this country because we punish it. And so that is why we're here today. And we have a responsibility to deliver on our promises. And that is what we're doing in the field of education, health, water and sanitation, housing, agriculture, Amerindian development. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are delivering. And we will do this, Mr. Speaker, with transparency and accountability. That is what we will do. We will manage this country, transparency and accountability. And it is our responsibility to talk to the population of Guyana as we promote one people, one nation, one destiny, one Guyana. And we must live in peace and harmony, unlike what is being promoted by the opposite side of the house, except in Mr. Schuman. Destruction, disturbance, and division. So I call, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the indigenous peoples of this country, we fully support Budget 2023 that would improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. I thank you, sir. God bless Guyana.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, Mr. Dionarain Ramsarup, you can proceed with your contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to make my contribution to Budget 2023, I would like to take this opportunity to wish all a Happy New Year. Speaker, before I continue, I would like to, thank the honorable member that just spoke, to remind us that our motto is one people, one nation, one destiny. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Speaker, I also want to make a comment on honorable member Ms. Sonia, and when she said that the two major projects that we contribute towards 2023 budget is the Demerara Harbor Bridge and the Gas to Shore project. And when that finished, the budget will go down. I fully agree with her, Mr. Speaker. But I want to remind her that the records, what guarantee do we have that the budget will go down, Mr. Speaker? I want to remind the House, Mr. Speaker, that the fiber optic cable project was a Whiteley fund. I want to remind the House, Mr. Speaker, that the specialty hospital was a Whiteley fund. I want to remind the House, Mr. Speaker, that the Skelland sugar factory was a Whiteley fund. I want to remind the House, Mr. Speaker, that the Amelia's Fast project is still there, and they can't get it out of the ground, Mr. Speaker. What guarantee do we have as Guyanese that that budget will come down, or they're not going to be setting another project in line? Mr. Speaker, I want to also congratulate all those hardworking public servants who spend the wee hours in preparing Budget 2023, and the Honorable Minister, Senior Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I thought this budget would have reached $1 trillion this year compared to last year with the number of supplementals we had to approve. But if it did, it wouldn't matter because the people of Guyana is not benefiting directly from this budget, Mr. Speaker. There is no excitement. There is no excitement, Mr. Speaker, of 2023 budget. No excitement. They had to fund themselves, Mr. Speaker, promoting a budget. Imagine that. Nevertheless, sir, I would like to turn your attention to the environment and what it means to Guyanese people and what happens in a blink of an eye. Sir, in 2016, thanks to the AP and UFC government that signed the oil deal that now rescue Guyana's economy, making it the 5th fastest growing economy in the world. We have brought this new revenue stream that's now placed in the hands of the PPP, who seems clueless how to spend this revenue. Despite, Mr. Speaker, despite early warnings of the Dutch disease. Mr. Speaker, it is upon us, as mentioned in the budget speech by the Senior Finance Minister. It is real, contrary, sir, contrary to what I heard in the Al Jazeera interview. Many of you know that. The Al Jazeera interview, where efforts were made to redefine the Dutch disease, Mr. Speaker. The guardrails was destroyed, sir. Where the PPP this year, in this very House, removed the 22 members oversight committee, comprised of various members of societies that covers the entire spectrum of our country, Mr. Speaker. It was reduced to 5 members committee, where 2 from the opposition were to be selected opposition, but because of the dictatorial approach by the government, they selected who they want, a breach of their own law, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, things will get worse than this Dutch disease. As I look into the budget, I didn't see any major spending for the EPA to build upon what the coalition handed over with respect to its human capacity and infrastructure development. When the coalition government took over in 23 years of destruction to the EPA, it was dysfunctional. It had only 2 vehicles for inspection and monitoring, which meant that no field monitoring and inspection occurred. No filing system of records to even now to know how many permits and operation existed. Mr. Speaker, unbelievable. The coalition found that the agency did not even have records of numerous operations, that there were 600 expired permits over some 15 years. Mr. Speaker, with less than 3 years, the EPA discovered that 2,000 projects existed, brought all permits and operation into compliance, and had 8 brand new vehicles without a dime from the Treasury, Mr. Speaker, without a dime from the Treasury. But funded by the collective of $150 million in fees owed from expired permit and back fees, built a state-of-the-art registry, Mr. Speaker, and filing system to manage these projects, increased staff by 20% with engineers and scientists, which the agency was severely lacking triple the number of EPA offices from 1 to 3 by adding offices in quarantine and Linden, Mr. Speaker, to ease the financial burden and inconveniences of businesses people, having to travel to Georgetown only to conduct business. Establish a 24/7 compliance hotline with a 24-hour response time, Mr. Speaker. That is what we have done to the EPA. And develop a culture of transparency, free access to media and public, Mr. Speaker, which is absent today. Mr. Speaker, instead of them building upon the strong foundation which we handed to them, they are now reverted back to the old destructive ways of the PPP. Staff are now being directed to issue permits without inspection, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most disturbingly, we learned that Exxon files have moved directly to the Executive Director's office. The question is, what is so special about this company and why has it moved there, sir? What is there to hide and why is the company being treated differently to even our local businesses, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, capacity building. Mr. Speaker, the EPA had no one with a petroleum background in the oil and gas sector when we took over in order to quickly build capacity to perform adequate monitoring and oversight of the oil and gas operation. With a $1 million from the IDB, Mr. Speaker, we have got with $1 million from the IDB. We had a World Bank development plan, a plan to build a 36-member oil and gas unit, highly specialized skills and experience for 24/7 on-site presence, Mr. Speaker, on the drill ship and the FPSOs to obtain credible and real-time information. When the government took office, they abandoned that plan and denied that it ever existed until the plan surfaced in the newspaper and caught them with their pants down, Mr. Speaker. Forcing the minister to defer question to the EPA directors, whose excuse was that he didn't know the plan existed since he was there. Mr. Speaker, to suggest that this didn't know of such an important and critical World Bank plan existed confirms the incompetency and the incapability to manage this important sector and their continued wasting of the World Bank's money. Even though they caught red-handed about 1 year ago, they still have not done anything to implement the plan to ensure there's a 24/7 on-site presence, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the coalition established a study leave program to build capacity where the EPA was to sponsor students to go to university and train and sign a 4-year contract to serve afterwards. But all these were abandoned, Mr. Speaker, abandoned. They told those students who had already applied to university and prepared to go that the program was abandoned and they are on their own. Mr. Speaker, every major project or business development must go through this institution. And it's shocking to learn that they don't have monies to pay staff for this month, Mr. Speaker. Very shocking. This institution is very important to the newly discovered oil resources, with the upscale production in the Stabroek Block and many others to come. Guyana must guard against environmental hazards such as oil spill, flaring, and the dumping of toxic water into the ocean. These are 3 major issues that Guyanese should be concerned with. And the EPA should equip itself to manage these, Mr. Speaker. Let us turn our attention to the flaring. Mr. Speaker, Liza Phase 1 in 2021 flared over 1 billion cubic feet of gas of a faulty compressor which is said was fixed, but flaring continues to no direct penalty, Mr. Speaker. We must understand that flaring releases over 250 identified toxic, including carcinogens such as the benzene, carbon disulfide, and toluene, metals such as mercury, Mr. Speaker, mercury, arsenic, and chromium, hydrogen sulfide. These are all toxic gases, Mr. Speaker. We learned that the US $10 million were paid to EPA, sir. This is a green light to flare. What we now have, Mr. Speaker, is a government, aka pay to pollute or no EIA government. That is what we have now, Mr. Speaker. That is what we have now. Demerara Harbor Bridge, no EIA required. the EPA published notice in the late 20s that the bridge would require an EIA, only to have it overturned by the politician in early 2021 against the EPA decision for an EIA to be done, Mr. Speaker. As soon as the coalition government was out of power, a close associate of the government cleared a huge plantation of mangrove forests at Valen Hope. You were there, Mr. Camarade. With a no EIA, not even an application to the EPA, and they cut down the mangroves, Mr. Speaker. I recall, Mr. Speaker, senior government official making statements that to pollute Guyana is the cost to develop Guyana. This is callous and irresponsible, Mr. Speaker. They know themselves, Mr. Speaker. In this disregard for the law by the government, why are they losing these lawsuits, like the one just recently lost when they did not do an EIA for the radioactive storage on the east bank of the Demerara, and shows clearly that the government values money over people's health, safety, and the environment. As I said, Mr. Speaker, this is a no EIA, pay to pollute government. Dumping of the toxic water waste into the ocean, Mr. Speaker. That is the same, that is, as I speak about the three important aspects, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the dumping of produced water is strictly prohibited in all parts of the world and prescribed by the World Bank. This had to do with highly toxic heavy metal, Mr. Speaker, radioactive materials, hot water 3 times more than the ocean water. This produced water also contains oil inside. And if we continue to dump this produced water with a rapid pace of oil production and development, then we will be dumping hundreds of thousands of barrels of pure oil in the ocean, Mr. Speaker. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, there was a popular video that was circulating by a fisherman that shows the oil was floating in the water, but that in terms that die. Mr. Speaker, the World Bank report says dumping of the produced water is prohibited unless it is not financially or technically feasible. But in this case, Mr. Speaker, it is easily feasible, both financially and technically, since normal international best practices call for it to be reinjected back into the reservoir with standard technology to maintain reservoir pressure, Mr. Speaker. But Guyana, they are injecting clean waters from the ocean while dumping the toxic into the water. How could that make a godly sense, Mr. Speaker? Except if it's only for greed and putting money above people's health and the environment, Mr. Speaker. Only the no EIA, pay to pollute PPC government would allow this, Mr. Speaker. After the election, they brought a highly controversial consultant from Canada to expedite the issuing of the permit from the Payara project. The team, which was led by Ms. Redford and comprised of the EPA, GGMC, and the Department of Energy, unanimously arrived at the decision that there shall be no dumping of produced water nor flaring of gas. The team met with Exxon, so directed that they installed equipment to do so. However, the PPC government disregarded that decision and now allows the unlimited dumping of the produced toxic water and unlimited flaring of the toxic gases as long as they could pay for it. That's right. Pollute as much as you want, as long as you can pay for it. They pay to pollute government, Mr. Speaker. That is what we have. Mr. Speaker, there has been an outcry from the media and public for government to release the Alison Redford report. We now ask again, Mr. Speaker, where is the Alison Redford report and why are they hiding it, Mr. Speaker? The only conclusion could be that they do not want the public to know that they went against their own foreign consultant and government agencies to the health and environment detriment of our people and the nation are supposed to be protecting. Show us the Alison Redford report, Mr. Speaker. Show us where it is. Oil spill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with the rapid rate of development in the oil and gas sector, one has to prepare for any mishap that we see to other parts of the world. All the monies earned now can be gone in a split of a second, Mr. Speaker. In a split of a second. We further plunge the country into bankruptcy, more heavy debt than the current and future generation will pay heavy price for that. That is poverty, Mr. Speaker. Poverty.
You will need an extension, honorable member, to conclude.
Comrade Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to continue his presentation. Conclude his presentation, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable member, you may continue towards your conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Worldwide offshore production operation like Guyana shows a high likelihood of an oil spill occurring offshore. That such likelihood of a spill increases exponentially with the rapid increase of offshore production activities and the reckless conduct of Exxon, with approval from the government to produce a rate of 25% above the safe operating limit defined in the EIA, Mr. Speaker. That is what they are doing, 25% above the limit, putting the country at a high risk for a spill. And sir, if you look at the emergency response and clean up of the British Petroleum in Macondo oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico have cost them $145 billion. I'm coming down to the figure just now, Mr. Speaker. 145 billion US dollars. The government is now talking about bringing able to see oil spill remotely, when more importantly, we should have a 24/7 on board oversight to prevent the spill. It is useless and too late when you see the spill, Mr. Speaker. We call on the government to implement the World Bank 36-member program of highly personnel to provide the capacity to prevent the spill in the first place by on-site rigorous oversight, Mr. Speaker. Full coverage liability insurance, Mr. Speaker. This is where the issue is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the topic seems to be a secret from Guyanese people at large. If by chance any of the disaster occurred that I previously mentioned here, Guyana and the rest of the Caribbean are doomed. And that is the doom, madam. That is the doom, honorable member. It will forever remain as it is. The coalition demanded and got Exxon to agree to have a full liability coverage to cover any size spill. Full liability coverage consists of an insurance plus the parent company guaranteeing, Mr. Speaker. It's a difference. It's a difference, Mr. Speaker. The parent company is running. Full liability coverage consists of insurance plus parent company guaranteeing that covers all costs above the insurance. It's simple formula, sir. Full coverage is equal to insurance plus parent company guaranteeing. That is what full coverage is, Mr. Speaker, not halfway. Mr. Speaker, that is what enshrined in the permits, and that is what is being negligibly allowed to be violated by this government. But like everything else, Mr. Speaker, it is the modus operandi of the government not to follow the rules of law. Like civilized and democratic countries would do, sadly, we now live in an autocracy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in last year's debate, we heard some ministers saying that parent company guarantee was too costly. So, Mr. Speaker, please give me the honor to educate my honorable colleagues on the other side. A parent company guarantee costs nothing, nada. Nada, Mr. Speaker. It's just a document that is signed by the Exxon Mobil, not the EEPGL, Mr. Speaker.
Nada, nada.
This language of full liability coverage, Mr. Speaker, which was created by the coalition, was put in the LISA 2 permit by the coalition and now copied by the PPC government and all other permits issued by the PPC. The VP himself verified this on the Glenn Show, Mr. Program. If you remember, he went to his phone and he quoted the section, Mr. Speaker, with the language. However, the government is allowing Exxon to operate without this parent company guaranteeing, and with only $600 million in insurance, with the parent company guaranteeing that costs nothing, Mr. Speaker. $600 million is useless. Mr. Speaker, the Macondo spill I referred to earlier costs $145 billion US dollars. So if you have a Macondo type spill here, who will cover the $144.4 billion? Who will cover it, Mr. Speaker? Above the $600 million insurance, which is merely 0.4% of that. That's just a typical example, Mr. Speaker. To put it another way, Mr. Speaker, the Macondo spill costed close to 250 times the $600 million that they were talking about here, Mr. Speaker. 250 times. And it's 50 times more of the entire budget here we're talking about, Mr. Speaker. You can understand the devastation, what can happen here. Mr. Speaker, therefore, there is a mystery still to anyone in this assembly as to why Guyana, many of its neighbors, would be financially bankrupt with the destruction of our fishing industry, tourism, and ecology. Mr. Speaker, I am not making this up. It is all in the EIAs. It will wipe out the Caribbean, tourism, and many others. Further, Mr. Speaker, even though the guarantee is zero cost, the government is now appeasing EEPGL. We're talking about cutting the legal requirements full, unlimited guaranteeing of $2 billion. $2 billion, Mr. Speaker. Again, who will cover the $143 billion US dollars if we to have the Macondo spill here? Above the insurance amount with a parent company guaranteeing of only $2 billion. Mr. Speaker, let me ask my Lorne colleagues on the other side, since I know that they all have some common sense. Here's my simple question, Mr. Speaker. Why won't Exxon want to sign a legal required guarantee that costs nothing, especially since the pledge that they will never walk away from any such responsibility? Well, Mr. Speaker, a simple question brings a simple answer. And the first simple answer is that the fact that because they are being allowed to get away with the lawlessness and the callousness by our reckless government that doesn't respect our own laws. But the real reason, Mr. Speaker, is that Exxon would have no liability above $600 million insurance. Our walk away would get costly. Think about it, Mr. Speaker. How else would this be explained if the pledge that they wouldn't walk away? Why can't they put the pledge in the writing if not costs nothing, Mr. Speaker? Why can't they do that? Mr. Speaker, now my time is running out. And I am going. Mr. Speaker, let me talk about the gas ashore project, Mr. Speaker.
Unfortunately, we are already a minute over the extension.
Mr. Speaker, permit me to conclude, Mr. Speaker. Permit me to conclude, Mr. Speaker. My expectation that I wanted to see for the development of our environmental in Guyana, Mr. Speaker. Implement the World Bank plan that I spoke about, providing for the 36-member unit a highly specialized oil and gas unit, and the EPA, the rovers oversight and monitoring, including 24/7 on the ship presence, Mr. Speaker. The talk about now being able to oil spill remotely, Mr. Speaker, when more importantly we should have 24/7 on board oversight to prevent spill. It's too late when you see the spill, Mr. Speaker. It's too late. It is better you do it before. Preventative is always better than... Mr. Speaker, I know my time is up, and I really wish I could have continued in this regard. But, Mr. Speaker, I've spoke so much about the environmental issues that we have in Guyana here, and they were not mentioned in the budget, and therefore is unable to me to support such a budget that does not have the input for this very important agency and institute in Guyana, Mr. Speaker. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Member, Dr. Vishwa Mahadia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying, first of all, congratulations to our Vice President and to Minister Ramson on their birthday. And a particular congratulations to the Vice President because he played a major role in getting us where we are today over the dark period of the 5 years that we all know about, that books have already been written about, played a major role in the time when the no confidence motion was passed, the 1 year that the people of Guyana were suffering every day in the field. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Minister Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh for his presentation of the 2023 budget. It was a marathon presentation, but every minute of that presentation said something of worth to the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly support this budget, as I was asked by my constituents in Region 6 to do so. I thank the PEP Civic Government of Guyana for once again preparing and presenting a people's budget, reflective of the consultations that were done with the citizens of Guyana. Sir, please permit me to also thank the staff of the Ministry of Finance for the hard work that they would have done. The staff of the Ministry of Finance do not have a break. They work from budget to budget, one cycle to the next. So I take the opportunity to thank the Minister of Finance and his staff for their continuous hard work and presentations of timely and people-centered budgets. Mr. Speaker, I stand here as the representative of the residents of Region 6 as one of the 2 geographic MPs on this side of the House. It is easy to break and destroy, and that can be done in a short time. The PNC, APNU, AFC, in a few short years, destroyed the good work that the PEP did over 23 years. Even to the end of their term, they decided to throw caution to the wind and try to steal the elections. The COI is revealing some truths. And Mr. Speaker, even those who pretended to be silent, even silence speaks volumes in that case. Mr. Speaker, this PPP civic government has over the last couple of years been building, constructing, and facilitating a growing Guyana. Like my colleague, Yvonne, honorable member, said, quoting back the song and giving it the correct interpretation, onward, upward we are going, Mr. Speaker. The hardships created by the PNC, AFC, APNU is known to everyone in and out of Guyana, but the people of Region 6 were particularly aimed at, and they felt the destructive force of this PNC, APNU, AFC government in every facet of life, whether it be agriculture, drainage and irrigation, healthcare, education delivery, employment. Sir, in every facet of life, the full force of the destructive nature of the APNU AFC was felt. Some examples: loss of thousands of jobs, closure of estates without any plan for alternative employment or source of income for families, destruction of the drainage and irrigation system in Region 6, non-functioning of the National Ophthalmology Hospital. But Mr. Speaker, democracy was salvaged in 2020, thanks to the resilience of the PPP civic leadership and all the freedom-loving citizens of Guyana and our friends from overseas. Books have already been written, Mr. Speaker, about that chapter of our dark history, that dark chapter of our history. And I'm sure more will be written as more truths are revealed. Mr. Speaker, 2022, you wish. 2022 was a good year for Guyana and for my region. There is now an air of expectancy, expectation of good things happening and better things to come. Mr. Speaker, residents of Region 6 see their leaders coming to their villages and towns, walking the streets, visiting their communities, from the chairman, the vice chairman. They see the president, the vice president, the prime minister, or ministers, MPs. They can share their concerns and suggestions directly with them. And Mr. Speaker, they could actually get live photographs with live people and not cardboard men. Mr. Speaker, we all remember the cardboard man. Mr. Speaker, 2022, from the RDC budget, 42 million was spent in drainage and irrigation, 54.4 for bridges, 273 million on road works done in every single NDC in Region 6 and every municipality. 69 million were spent on buildings for education. In health, 891 million was spent for buildings and 74 million on furniture and equipment. Mr. Speaker, the Guyana Marketing Corporation did retrofitting and equipping of agro-processing facility in Blackbush Polar, approximately $150 million. In 2023, they will be doing construction and equipping of agro-processing facility at Crabble Creek, $25 million. Retrofitting and equipping of agro-processing facility in Oriala, $25 million. Mr. Speaker, The GRDB did constructed a drying floor at Adventure, $15 million. Rehabilitation work to Les Beholden Seed Facility. A dryer will be purchased for the seed facility at Les Beholden. Total of 788 farmers benefited from flood relief assistance to the tune of $833+ million. Biofortified and other research projects valuing approximately $6.5 million ongoing at the GRDB substation in Les Beholden. Low-yielding farmers project initiated where GRDB extension officers are required to provide and support 10 farmers who experience low yields. Mr. Speaker, the list is long. Mr. Speaker, the National Agriculture Research and Extension Institute also played a part in 2022 in Region 6, providing coconut seedlings, fertilizer, limestone, vegetable seedlings, insecticides, treatment for cushy ants, knapsack, pumps, shade houses. Mr. Speaker, I have the list here if anybody is interested. Farmers were also trained. 460 farmers benefited. Their distribution of beneficiary packages for the Food and Agriculture Organization Emergency Response and 130 smallholder farmers benefited from Region 6. Mr. Speaker, the National D&I Authority also spent monies in a total of 93 projects that dealt with drainage and irrigation, that dealt with the livelihoods of farmers in Region 6. Mr. Speaker, for 2023, the region has budgeted $71.5 million for D&I, $54 million for bridges, $300 million for roads, $289 million education delivery, and $294.8 million for the health services. Again, Mr. Speaker, these monies will be spent across the entire region. Mr. Speaker, to help persons who are unemployed, 4,000 part-time jobs are made available, and 4,000 persons in Region 6 are now getting employment as part-time workers. But more, Mr. Speaker, these part-time workers, whilst they're earning, also have the possibility of studying. And I know of a relatively large number of young persons in my region who are doing the part-time job and who would have also gotten gold scholarships. So they're working and studying, and that is also a possibility in Guyana now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Minister Parag spoke about the gold scholarship and how it's being given. This people-centered government will not tell our young people that government does not provide jobs. We will empower our young people. We provide opportunities for them to grow, to study, and to earn. Mr. Speaker, I would have heard comments about the budget. I would have heard comments about the figures and the language and whatever. But Mr. Speaker, I'm not surprised, unlike my colleague, Honorable Member Pierce, I'm not surprised. We all know that those sitting on the opposite side of this House, again, I would say except the Honorable Deputy Speaker, they got a problem with maths. Remember the 32.5 man? Mr. Speaker, they also have a problem with English. And this budget is all about figures and English. If they have a problem with that, then how can they understand what is the direction the budget is going? How can they understand help that people will be getting? How can they understand the impact that this budget is going to have on every life, on every single person living in Guyana? Mr. Speaker, it's not only about how much money the pensioners will get, it is also about what we would have done before. They put VAT, they remove subsidies. We remove the VAT and we give back the subsidies. This people of Guyana across the entire country. Mr. Speaker, health in Region 6. Outreaches were done in Oriala, Siparuta, Baracara, Mara, and in specialist outreaches were done in the health centers on the East Bank and other health centers along the coast. Specialists visited on a rostered basis all 3 district hospitals, Skeldon, Maibikuri, and Port Moran, and provided service. Geriatric homes were visited regularly along with the orphanages that are in the region. And Mr. Speaker, the home-based care program 2009, and which was going very well, and which was stopped by the APNO AFC government in 2015 has restarted. Mr. Speaker, over 1,000 persons in Region 6, and that was also stopped, has again started, and 1,000 persons plus in Region 6 has benefited in 2022. And I'll speak about that a bit. Speaker, let's talk about the ophthalmology hospital. It will take me into the work of the Ministry of Health, and I am a part of the staff of the Ministry of Health under the leadership of Honorable Minister Frank Anthony. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health has taken charge. The leadership of the Ministry of Health has taken charge, and we are where it is now and to a brighter future. Mr. Speaker, the management has improved and continues to improve. Confidence is growing in the healthcare system. And here, Mr. Speaker, I want to say thanks to the President and the government of Guyana, to the Ministry of Finance for the monies that they have allotted to the healthcare workers, the increase in salary, their lives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my region, the National Ophthalmology Hospital has been reopened and is functioning once again after not functioning under the APNO AFC. It took a large investment to bring it to a state of readiness, to be able to do surgeries. Equipment were not working. Fungus was on the walls of the theater, Mr. Speaker, and anybody who has a modicum of knowledge of surgery knows that that is critical. They had infrastructure issues. The roof was leaking. Mr. Speaker, once again, that facility is fully functional. Surgery started this year on February 14. They started doing laser for the retinopathy patients. They started school screening in the primary and secondary schools. Cataracts were operated on. Cataract patients were operated on. Retina patients with bleeding now have access to laser therapy. Ultrasound for patients with bleeding at the back of the eye. These patients used to be referred overseas. And bleeding secondary to trauma are now available. Outreach was done to all the remote areas in Region 6 by the ophthalmology staff, and refers to GPHC are limited. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, a total of 1,769 surgeries were done in the National Ophthalmology Hospital, a hospital that didn't do surgeries in the years prior to that. Mr. Speaker, I just want, Minister is prompting me, I just want to say also, I want to touch you about the hinterland, health services in the hinterland. But before I go there, Mr. Speaker, the elderly care program that started in 2009 and, like I said, was stopped. For last year, it was for the 2022, it was expanded, and now it's in regions 2, 3, 5, 6, and 9, and a total of 6,300 odd persons, geriatric patients, benefited from that program across these regions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard the honorable member from Region 1 talking about Region 1. And the only thing I heard him mention is Mabaruma, and I just want to advise the honorable member that Region 1 is a lot more than Mabaruma. A lot more than Mabaruma. And I heard him say that the honorable member, Minister Colin Crowell, spoke about visited only Mabaruma and talked to people in Mabaruma. That was the impression that he was giving. Mr. Speaker, I personally visited, out of the 50 facilities, primary healthcare facilities that we have there, I visited 44 in those communities. And I could tell you, in each one of those communities that I went, people were speaking about Minister Crowell's visits. He would have visited over 90% of these facilities, Mr. Speaker.
Before you could get to the 10% more, you'll have to get an extension.
Mr. Speaker, may the honorable member have 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, honorable member. You may continue.
The major achievements in Region 1, Mr. Speaker, they have started training for the first time. Nursing assistants are being trained there. And Mr. Speaker, across the country, we would have nearly doubled the number of community health workers. They have 6 dormant, non-functional facilities were reactivated, including Blackwater, Savannah, Barbina, 5-Star, Cookrit, Taswini, and St. Aslim. Mr. Speaker, I invite the member to visit these facilities. 10 facilities that never had community health workers that were there but non-functional because they didn't have staff, now have 2 community health workers each. Screening for eye problems are done. And Mr. Speaker, as we speak, patients from Region 1 are getting surgeries in the National Ophthalmology Hospital, the same hospital that was non-functional under the APNO AFC. Mr. Speaker, the Maruka Hospital now has a functioning theater, and over 60 patients have already had surgeries in the operating theater in Maruka. Mr. Speaker, they also have ultrasound facilities and X-ray. Mr. Speaker, 100% of those primary health care facilities have better services and provide more diagnostics. If we look at Region 9, Mr. Speaker, they would have also had decentralized training. They would have also had, for the first time, training being done in the region for nursing assistants, for pharmacy assistants. They'll be starting training for medical technicians, Mr. Speaker, scrub technicians. We are building Guyana, Mr. Speaker, one day at a time. They did specialist outreaches in every single health facility in Region 9. In most of these facilities, there were 2 specialist outreaches. They provided obstetric and gynae care. They provided ultrasound in the villages for the first time, Mr. Speaker. All pregnant women would have had at least 1, in most cases 2 and 3 ultrasounds during the course of their pregnancy. Never happened before, Mr. Speaker, never. And Mr. Speaker, we screened 60 patients from Region 9. We brought them out. We got their surgeries done at the National Ophthalmology Hospital, and we took them back, including members from the opposition and relatives. Mr. Speaker, we also have another project that the minister, a brainchild of the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, the Snap-on Spectacle Project, I'm sure the minister will speak about it, but I need to say, when he told me about that project, I had my doubts. But Mr. Speaker, when I see the school children, benefiting from these spectacles, they come, they get their eyes tested, and they leave with prescription glasses. Mr. Speaker, it was a sight to behold, and that is going to continue. Mr. Speaker, the coalition never take care of me. The coalition kicked me out of my job. Remember that. Mr. Speaker, there is improved diagnostics in radiology. There are more vehicles that have been distributed. Mr. Speaker, theater in Region 7, Camarang, that theater is soon to be functional. Within next month, we'll start doing surgeries there. In Aishalton, first week next month, surgeries will be starting there for those residents. Mr. Speaker, Madhya, the theater in Madhya is soon going to be functional. The theater in Maikoni that never worked has been doing surgery since last year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is rehab therapists in all regions of Guyana now. Previously, they were not in all the regions. Mr. Speaker, in wrapping up, I want to say that betrayal of trust is never a good thing. When an individual is betrayed, the individual loses trust and faith in the person who betrayed the individual. Mr. Speaker, our nation was betrayed when they put their trust in the APNO AFC. The good life was promised, but only a few in the hierarchy benefited, living the good life with gifts and other perks. The nation was betrayed and will not trust this group again. You will not only be there for a long time, Mr. Maipol, but your numbers will also dwindle come the next election. Maybe this is why you're afraid to go to local government election. Your numbers will then dwindle, and as your numbers decrease over there, our numbers will increase over here. Mr. Speaker, so learn to be a good opposition. Learn to be a good opposition. You're there for a long, long time. Mr. Speaker, like His Excellency said, this is a transformative budget. It will take long to build, to cultivate, to mold, and to develop an individual, and even longer to develop a country and a nation. And it is achieved with a lot of hard work, effort, discipline, trust, and of course, the necessary financing. And the budget is providing us with the financing. The government has to stay rooted with its people. President, Vice President, Prime Minister, ministers, and MPs must walk with the people, meet with the people, listen to them. And that is what this government is doing. Mr. Speaker, this budget provides the financing and the framework to further develop Guyana, to further transition this dear land of ours to its true potential. This budget, Mr. Speaker, indeed has something for everyone. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is taking one more step towards the bright future Guyana deserves. Thank you.
Much honorable member. I'm now calling on the Honorable Sonia Parag to move the motion so that we can continue until the business of today and for the rest of the budget debate and estimates are concluded.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully rise to move the suspension of Standing Order 10.1 and 10.4, and that this resolution of the 12th Parliament to allow us to proceed during the debate and consideration of the estimates to go beyond 8 p.m. every day until the business of each day is completed.
Thank you very much. Those in favor, I now put the motion. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. We will continue every day until the debate and the estimates are concluded beyond 8 o'clock to complete the business of that particular day. Honorable member, we now invite the honorable member, Ms. Natasha Singh Lewis, to make her contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot believe some of the things I heard from the Honorable Member Mahadio just now. But, sir, I wish to state that he has actually said to us in not so many words what one Guyana means. The opposition and their families are not entitled to be taken care of by the health system of Guyana. That's what he said. He even took care of the members of the opposition and their families in this National Assembly. Sir, how more low can we get? How more low can we get? I would have expected, you know, some level of maturity from that member. He's a doctor. He's been in this house for a while. He's been in the political arena for a while. I am so disappointed. Frank, don't get involved. Mr. Speaker, not my clown, not my circus. I rise today to add my contribution to the 2023 budget by thanking God Almighty for life and His mercies. Gratefulness is an innate behavior of mankind, all of us. And so while I thank Him for strength and mental wellness to serve the people of our dear land, I also want to thank the many public servants who would have spent a lot of time and energy in preparing this budget. Mr. Speaker, it is disappointing to come here again for the fourth time in less than 2.5 years to talk about the biggest budget in the history of our country, while the poor people are suffering, while poor people's homes are being bulldozed right in front of the eyes of our innocent children, while children in the Rupununi are sleeping on bare sponge on the ground in their dorms, while parents can hardly feed their children, but the ministers of government are taking home more than $1.3 million every single month. It is a sad day for all of us in Guyana when we have to come here just for due process to be observed so that the PPPC can continue to fill the pockets of their friends, families, and favorites. Mr. Speaker, the actions of this debate is so routine and mundane that the only important aspect for us is to ensure that our contributions in the form of recommendations from these speeches are captured in the Hansard and that it will be part of our history. I am fearful that history will judge us as a country harshly because the manner in which the business of this country is being done is horrifying. This budget lacks any discernible strategy to eliminate poverty. It lacks both hope and a model that promises development of our human capital. I'm definitely very disappointed. This PPPC-installed administration can only be described as heartless. The percentage of people living under poverty is getting higher, and there's little or no priority on supporting programs to highlight the village economy or creating work for the unemployed. And please don't tell me about the part-time jobs for $40,000 per month. Is that the PPPC employment mechanism? Sir, that is a demonstration of the level of disrespect they have for our Guyanese people. That is a handout without thinking about the future of our people. Our people is who will determine where we go. Is this how we are improving the lives of our people today? With part-time jobs, sir? Per month part-time jobs? Our prosperity tomorrow is doomed under this installed government. Mr. Speaker, there are people in Region 6 who benefited from the $40,000 temporary jobs. And you know, I've been going to Region 6 a lot. And one day we were midway on the quarantine and we stopped at Liverpool and I met Charmaine. Charmaine is a single parent who is from Liverpool, who has 4 children, and fortunately she was employed and placed to do gardening at the health center in the village there. Sir, $40,000 cannot feed her and her 4 children. And so I took the opportunity to recommend to Charmaine, I encourage her to go and apply to the region for public assistance for the 4 children, since they are all in nursery and primary schools. Sir, during the Christmas time of 2022, she was notified that because she was employed, she cannot receive public assistance. Sir, that is the prosperity of our people. Now we understand why the people in the Ministry of Human Services do not want the current minister that they have. That's the kind of policy that is in place. Mr. Speaker, this budget is disappointing and serves as a signal of doom for the working class and the poor and all of Guyana, except the friends, family, and favorites. Sir, these people sit in government on stolen votes. Fraud is all they know. And so looking at measures to reduce poverty, it will be a difficult task for them. But nevertheless, sir, I'm an optimist. And so days leading up to the budget presentation, I was thinking that we will see more money because of the access of oil revenue. I will see, and I honestly believe that I was so naive to believe that I'll see a vision which will translate to the promotion of equal access to education, creating real employment opportunities for our people, and at this point, a real policy for the reduction of poverty in this country. Sir, after 2 years and 4 budgets, people are poorer in this country. Cost of living is beyond what they can afford to survive. Sir, giving people cash grant is a good thing, and giving them the uniform allowance and so on is a good thing, but it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient. Sir, giving people cash grants is a good thing, and I do believe, given our reality of COVID-19. But sir, the worrisome thing about cash grants is the discriminatory manner in which it is distributed. Whether it was the COVID cash grant or the flood relief for the farmers or the cash grant for the fisher folks, only the people who are covered by the One Guyana slogan can benefit. Is that how we are improving the lives of our people today? Sir, a matter was reported to me while I was in my constituency, and I investigated it. West Berbice, Gaisuku employee received the Fisher Folk cash grant. Sir, how is that possible? What was the criteria for the Fisher Folk cash grant? And how did a Gaisuku employee end up with a Fisher Folk cash grant? Sir, I am awaiting the full report. Yes, Adil. I am awaiting the full report, and I shall make it public. The details of that report, I shall make it public. Sir, cash grants, like I said, is a good thing. It is a good thing as a short-term relief measure, but it's not an indication of a long-term solution for poverty. It is not. It is not a long-term solution for poverty reduction. Mr. Speaker, I thought I would have seen by now some of the more concrete measures and the relevant indicators for reduction of inequality in this country. None was forthcoming, and that's me just being naive. Sir, more importantly than all of that, I was looking forward for any strategy or policy that aims at promoting political inclusion. Sir, these are the parameters to a safe and prosperous Guyana. Political inclusion, reduction of inequalities, poverty reduction, among others. Mr. Speaker, this budget, I must say, is visionless. What are the indicators in this budget that suggest that at some point, while being an oil-producing nation, we will be a unified Guyana, where all of our diversities, given that we are multi-ethnic, multicultural, where all of our diversities are embraced, where equity is promoted, and decision-making processes at all levels, including the political level, results in equal opportunities and benefits for all of Guyana. Let me repeat so that we can visualize what prosperity means, Mr. Speaker. So let me state what vision means for a prosperous Guyana. A unified Guyana where all of our diversities are embraced, where equity promoted and decision-making processes at all levels, including the political level, results in equal opportunity for all Guyanese. Sir, the people who are promoting One Guyana can use that as a vision for Guyana instead of the current slogan. You can actually take out action points from that vision and achieve tolerance and cohesion in this country. Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the House have been articulating to the international community and the world at large that what we are expecting and we're experiencing as One Guyana, what actually we're experiencing, Mr. Speaker? Divide and rule, allocate the resources to friends, family, and favorites, while lawlessness returns and crime is spiraling out of control. Sir, every week, women are being killed. The number of children suffering and not being reached by the current system, and in each region, the cases are overwhelming. Sir, in Region 3, for example, Region 3 and 6, the cases of school-age girls who have been sexually assaulted and raped has increased significantly. Is this how we are improving the lives of our people, sir? How could we use words such as prosperous to describe this budget? How, Mr. Speaker? I know the 10% who are friends, family, and favorites will become prosperous, and the 90% of us will remain in poverty. That is so unfair. And you know, Mr. Speaker, in all of this, it is the children who suffers the most when things like this happen. I'm deeply concerned about the state of our education system and its impact on the future of our children. The policy shift in the direction does not position us as a country well at this time, especially since we are battling the effects of COVID-19 on us all, particularly our students, teachers in the classroom, and of course the educators in the departments in the regions, standing strong to hold the system together. And I really want to pause to thank those education officers in all of the regions who I have noticed in the public domain, they have been under attack by teachers, whether it's justified or not. You know, I've worked with some of them, and I know how difficult it is to hold it together in the department when things are escalating in the schools. Mr. Speaker, we in this House must hold this installed government accountable for the direction in which this sector is heading. There are too many heads, and the education train is speeding away, downward spiraling, and out of control in its direction, while very little is being done to salvage the situation. Let me explain, Mr. Speaker. In this House a few days ago, Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh, who presented the budget, said that an education system that delivers a modern model, an adaptive learning experience is an imperative to realizing His Excellency's vision of a world-class education for all. Improved access, quality, and relevance are essential to raising Guyana's human capital to the levels needed to advance and sustain the eminent transformative economic and social development. He said that, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, that is excellent. I think that's an excellent goal on paper. But hear me out, because I want to demonstrate that what I would have said earlier, and that is, I'm deeply concerned about the state of education and its vision going forward. Sir, The differing views on the long-term goals pose great problems for Guyana because of the weak leadership that cannot transform this sector or this nation. Sir, while Dr. Singh mentioned the President's vision for world-class education, he did not give us the full statement of His Excellency. He omitted, deleted, lied to us when he did that. Sir, I recall...
You're saying the Honorable Minister lied to us? Honorable members, we got to, for the first day of the debate with all of these words, and we have to stop it, or I'll interject time and time again. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
Thank you, sir. I don't mind you interjecting, sir. I don't mind.
But if you continue to abuse the standing order, I'll stop you.
That's all right.
Okay.
Sir, the differing views on the long-term goal poses great problem. The Honorable Minister of Finance was being untruthful to this House when he made that statement. Sir, I recall that while the President was at the 77th United Nations General Assembly last year, I remembered he made a statement. But let me tell you what a DPI report dated September 20th, 2022 stated. It says, while President Ali delivered remarks as the chair of the Transforming Education Summit, the head of state stated that as part of Ghana's effort to strengthen the education system, his government plans to increase its expenditure by 20%. This, he said, was necessary due to the implications of the pandemic on the education system. Sir, this was September 2022, just around the time when they would have completed the half-year review of the sector, and about the same time Budget 2023 preparations was being done. Lo and behold, we are here today faced with a budget for the sector that is only $94.4 billion, which is approximately only 12% when His Excellency promised the United Nations 20%. Mr. Speaker, is this incompetence, blatant untruths, disrespect?
Okay. Disrespect is one here we got in the right, and the continued reference to His Excellency allowed your making comment with respect to what was quoted. That was fair, but now you are interpreting and giving an opinion of the president to influence the debate. I wouldn't allow that. Okay? I wouldn't allow that. And I was waiting to hear the time frame of this 20% increase. If it was promised within a... Yes. Go ahead now.
I'm sorry, his statement didn't give a time frame, sir.
Yes. So it's hard to call untruth, disrespectful, and things like that. Go ahead.
Sir, I will just say that this is the level of incompetency that we have here. Sir, my own thought of the statement that was made at the UN Assembly, the fact that we have a budget which is 8% less of what was promised or stated. Sir, for me, my own thought, that is a reflection of the infighting that is not recorded, that is not placed on Facebook, but it is the PPP power struggle and the infighting manifesting itself into government's business. 12% of this budget, sir, it begs the question, what exactly is the vision for education? When you can allocate that miserly sum to the sector, that is the main vein of our country. Sir, at this point in time, I would like to remind the Minister of Education of her own words in this House in her last budget presentation. She said, and please guide me here, sir, because I want to quote, this is a quote from the Hansard, what the Minister of Education said. She said, "Do not hoodwink, mislead, and be dishonest with the people who are looking to you for leadership." End of quote. Today, I wish to return those same sentiments to this installed government and to advise them to be truthful. Tell the people that the government has no clue on how to transform education and that nepotism is one of the gears swaying the education train out of control. Sir, all of us in this House should be held accountable and must never seek to deceive the nation. Mr. Speaker, I concur that 2023 education budget allocation should have been 20% of the national budget, so as to create the change necessary to continue the transformation of education in this country. Sir, what is the vision of this country? And I keep going back to the vision because we only been hearing about one Guyana. We have not heard what that translates to. And so I keep asking, what is the vision for this country? What should we expect as a nation by 2025? Mr. Speaker, we didn't have to go very, very far to research economic development for this sector or for our country. If only we had done a little bit of research, we'd found that the Caribbean Community Strategic Plan, they would have recognized that the human resource development is vital for our social and economic prosperity, regional integration, building resilience, and sustainable development. Sir, this plan could have contributed to sincerely addressing our human resources development in this country, and it's available for all of us to have. Sir, the unwillingness of this government to go above and beyond to address sincerely the development of our human resource should be a crime. Mr. Speaker, allow me to focus on what's happening across the education sector. Sir, let me tell you what their own budget said to us in the last 2 years. One, the 2022 goals for students scoring 50% or more at NGSA was not met. Two, in fact, the percentage of students scoring 50% or more at NGSA fell from 30% in 2021 to 28% in 2022, even though they were aiming for 50% as their target in 2022. Sir, where is the value for money? In almost every area of performance in primary education, and to some extent secondary education, the percentage fell. They did not meet their targets. Similarly, the percentage of students with passes from grades 1 to 3 for 5 subjects, including math and English, only grew by 2%, from 30% to 32% when the target was 52%. This reality, sir, this CXC reality, is clouded and hidden by just a few students who managed to write 20 and more subjects at CSEC. This is so because the media debate is then taken over by how many subjects students should write, and when the real issue is the hundreds of students not passing math and English at grades 1 and 3. In my opinion, sir, that should have been the debate rather than people who are writing 20 subjects and more. Sir, let us note that the budget was a large one last year, but the change in results was minimal, and that is cause for concern. If we look at the matrices on our performance in 2029, that is the APNU AFC 2019 and 2018, if we can go back to that here, you can see that the government spending more money now. This government is spending more money now than what we spent in 2018 and 2019, and the results are woefully unacceptable at this time. And so we ask the question, what is different? We have more money, we should see better results. That's our expectation. What are we seeing? 43.1 billion for education in 2017, worst pass rate in math in 2019 was 39%. In 2017 versus 34% in 2022. So if we had less money in 2017 and we gave 39% pass rate, we have more money in 2022 and the pass rate is 34%. So something is not adding up, something is not right. The education sector performed much better in terms of delivering results under the APNU AFC with far less resources, and that is given to the sector. Mr. Speaker, you know when I looked at the budget, I looked for measures in place that will provide ease for the poor people. Not only the poor people, the disadvantaged people too, sir. There's a particular unit in the sector that is dedicated to serving our children with disabilities, the special education needs and disabilities. I have noticed when I look at the indicators in 2023, 2022, and 2021, I have noticed that the performance has dropped significantly. And so outside of the numbers given in the budget documents, I decided to do an investigation. I decided to speak to people. And what I found was some serious challenges, sir. To date, only the Sophia Special School has a practical instructional center in this country. There's a breakdown in testing and diagnosis of learners and time taken to process the results. This impacts the preparation of the individualized education plan. Sir, how one caters for needs of learners with cerebral palsy in the mainstream schools as well as special needs schools. I do believe that extensive training is needed, and it appears that we are losing our teachers, our trained teachers and practitioners in this area. Sir, currently, the non-academic standard does not cater for all categories of SEN learners. Will this year's budget address these deficiencies, sir? I am hoping when the Minister of Education speaks tomorrow, she would spend some time to tell us about the challenges and what the education system intends to do, because we want to create equal opportunity for our children in our education sector. There's a need for more skill-based programs for learners with SEND. We should move in the direction of employing medical personnel for each SEND school or center. More SEND teachers are needed, as well as officers to better impact Guyana's special ed program. More training is needed to equip SEND teachers to better cater for the needs of our learners. Sir, when we commissioned the SEND Center in Region 3, we thought, that was one step in the right direction. It is important for us to understand that we have children with disabilities across the length and breadth of this country. And so 1 or 2 centers is not good enough. And I'm saying this at this point in time because this is the kind of infrastructure that we can put in place as an oil-producing nation. And I'm saying again, that the 12% is insufficient, particularly for this kind of special needs infrastructure that is needed.
And honorable member, at this time you'll need an extension.
Comrade Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you very much. Honorable member, you may continue to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I recognize that a lot has to be done in the education sector for us to talk about education transformation. Mr. Speaker, could we not afford to give our teachers better salary? Could we not afford to give our teachers better working conditions instead of having them in rain, under a shed, or in a tent to deliver their curriculum? Could we not treat them with a little bit of respect and understand that the law provides for them to have good working conditions? Could we not afford to ensure all our teachers are technologically empowered with updated electronic devices? Sir, I believe that at this moment in our country, we should write off, and hear me, sir, we should write off all the student loan debts for every Guyanese who attended the University of Guyana. It takes nothing out of us to do that, sir, but it would be a great respect for the people of this country to do that. And this is how we will create economic dynamism for our young people and, moreover, all Guyanese. Sir, why is it that after 4 budgets, our poor Guyanese student still has to pay huge sums of money per year to attend the Guyana School of Agriculture? That should be free, sir. Sir, we have, as a nation, one premier national university, and that is the University of Guyana. I'm proud of that institution, sir. Education should be free, sir. We can afford it. This is how we will develop our human resources in this country. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the Ministry of Education should embark on establishing a sports academy for our boys and girls who are so talented and should be trained. Sir, can we not incentivize post-secondary education, especially tech-voc education, where can we not afford to give our students in tech-voc a stipend so as to allow them to stay and to matriculate in their fields of study? Sir, I believe every secondary school in every region should be equipped with audiovisual and virtual classrooms in interconnected hubs. Mr. Speaker, every school was equipped with Wi-Fi under the APNU AFC, and I want to put on record, sir, 158 primary schools, 105 secondary schools, 30 tech-voc institutions, internet for the University 3 campuses, 72 hinterland communities. Sir, these are things that we have done as a coalition while in government, and all the ministry had to do was to continue with the infrastructure. And sir, we did all of that without all money. So I believe we can maintain them and we can do a lot more. Sir, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues earlier in the day mentioned that transportation to school for students is an economic burden for our parents. And so while the government disregarded the David G. 5B's program, at a cost to our people, a reliable and cost-effective education, school transportation service is necessary to ease the financial burdens of every parent. I want to pause at this moment to ask the Minister of Education if she can find the buses that are still working and assign them to the students of Christ Church Secondary so that can ease the transportation burden, since she did a very good job in placing them so quickly at CPC, but we recognize that CPC is so far out of Georgetown, it creates an economic burden on the parents. Sir, could we not at this time engage professionals to develop local media content designed to shape civic mindedness? I believe that is a low-hanging fruit for the ministry, and as it is right now, it will lend, a campaign like that will lend to a greater understanding, greater tolerance and acceptance, as we are one people, one nation with one destiny. Mr. Speaker, would you notice that I have spent much time on the recommendations and proposals because I want it to be noted, sir. We don't come and highlight the challenges. We come with the solutions too because we have a plan and we know what development should be, sir. Sir, I want to specifically highlight some specific negative behavioral issues and challenges that we have seen in the press. Sir, let me wrap up by saying that we have seen a cycle of parents beating teachers, teachers beating students, head teachers beating teachers, and parents beating teachers. There's a lot of beating in that whole cycle of stakeholders in our education sector. Sir, I do believe that the HFLE unit of the Ministry of Education can do a lot more. I do believe that the Parent Teachers Association can come out and do some work and not just sit there because we employ them as family and friends. Sir, I cannot, in this current form of this budget, I really cannot support Budget 2023. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member Mr. Dharam Kumar Siraj, it's your turn to make your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me this opportunity at this hour to make my presentation on Budget 2023 as presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Senior Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance. And from the onset, Mr. Speaker, I wish to acknowledge, like so many other of my colleagues, the hard, dedicated work that went into the preparation of a document that is preparing to improve our lives today whilst laying a solid foundation for prosperity tomorrow and way ahead in the future. And Mr. Speaker, this budget is following a trend that is long established by this government, the People's Progressive Party civic government. And it has measures in place that are totally unrelated to election cycles. And I say this because sometimes in planning budget, politicians would look at what to do to make you the most popular party at the time of elections. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, the PPP civic government is concentrating on building a solid foundation for generations to come. And if you look at the budget also, especially in the big projects, the transformational projects, some of them have started, some will start this year, some will start next year. Many of them will be finished long after 2025, and the impact will not be felt by our voting population. But that is not of concern to us. What is of concern for us is that we are putting and laying a solid foundation for prosperity of all our people. In 2020, Mr. Speaker, it was our plan for the budget team, it was our plan for prosperity, protecting our people in a COVID-19 environment, strengthening democracy and the rule of law, incentivizing growth and job creation, enhancing welfare. That budget, Mr. Speaker, was $29.5 billion. And indeed, that period was very challenging. The 2021 budget of $383.1 billion that spoke about a path to recovery, economic dynamism, and resilience. Again, recognizing the challenges that the global community would have been faced with in a post-pandemic era, COVID pandemic, and then we see continuation of different strains of COVID virus, so the challenge is still there. In 2022, steadfast against all challenges, resolute in building our one Guyana, a budget of 553 billion. And this year, Mr. Speaker, 2023, improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I just bring this to our attention so that we can appreciate the continuation of our policies and programs towards bringing about a better life for all of our people. Mr. Speaker, it will be remiss of me if I don't address some of the issues raised by members of Parliament on the other side. And first of all, I would like to clarify what Honorable Member Dr. Mahadev would have said, because it was definitely interpreted wrongly by the Honorable Member who spoke before me. Dr. Mahadev was talking about the increase in providing, well, the eye care treatment for our people in hinterland communities. And he said that citizens benefited, members of the opposition and their families benefited, and rightfully so. Nowhere did Mr. Mahadev ever said that members of the opposition should not be catered for. And he will be highly responsible to say that. And he said that because in the context that there have been claims of discrimination, there have been claims of discrimination by members of the opposition or by the government in rolling out different programs. Honorable Mr. Cox spoke about the gold program, and the way he was speaking is that if this government has deliberately set about to discriminate against members of the opposition. My Paul is heckling and saying it's true, and that is why Dr. Mahadev had to be clear in saying what he said and to get that over with. Mr. Speaker, a number of speakers would have spoken about this issue at Mocha, and they failed to bring to light the measures that were taken into consideration in addressing this issue of developing a 4-lane highway along the East Bank corridor. And Mr. Speaker, for the record, I have family friends in Mocha. I've been to Mocha since in the late 80s. I go there and I visit people, the Blair, the Clarks, family friends from King Grove, and they migrate there. So some of the people who are now talking about Mocha, they probably were not residing there when I started going to Mocha a long time ago. In 1999, 2000, Mr. Speaker, I was actively engaged in providing enhanced drainage and irrigation services to the people of Mocha, working closely with residents there to provide service. But the point here, Mr. Speaker, is that our development agenda, as we seek to provide better roadways, better water services, better telecommunication, they will have impact on existing communities. And Mocha is not the first, and it definitely will not be the last. Take, for example, the development of the bridge across the Berbice River. Cotton Tree residents, and these are transported property in those areas. People were called in by the government, they were engaged by the government, they received, they moved, they were provided accommodation, and nobody would have been bulldozed if the opposition didn't go in there and put wrong things in their head. It was all politics. And Cotton Tree, when they went there, they moved the people. I was personally engaged in the Parfaith Harmony Access Road when His Excellency the President was Minister of Housing. I engaged on his advice a rice farmer by the name of Mad who had lands across the area there. And I asked him if he can donate the land to the government, and I argued with him that putting a roadway through his land will increase the value of this land. And this is a transported property. And Mr. Madhu came up to an arrangement with the Ministry of Housing at that time, and now we have the busiest access to Parfaith Harmony through lands that was once owned by Mr. Madhu. Currently, I think the Attorney General Office is engaged in an advanced way with people who own land where this four-lane highway from Schooner to Crane is going to come out, and also where the gas to shore project is going to pass through leased land and transported land. And people will give up their lands in recognition of the developmental trust of the government to address the issue of transportation congestion, to address issue of drainage and irrigation, to address issues of energy, communication, and all of that. So the people of Moko who had to be moved were doing so in a peaceful manner. The Ministry of Housing laid out a number of measures, giving them transported property, helping them with building and all of that. And the politics step in. Politics of really stymieing development. You know, it's all in the little league mentality. And if we were thinking big, we would have a better and greater appreciation of what needs to be done. Mr. Speaker, we heard about this issue of poverty getting higher. Where is it coming from? Where is the study? Poverty, of course, was mentioned at 42%, but the way it was mentioned by one of the honorable members is that if this was last year or this year, that was in 2019. The issue of healthy food, that study was done in 2020. No, it was done in 2018 also. So it is not that the issue of poverty and access to good food, all these indicators are moving in the right direction because of the investments that are being put into by the People's Progressive Party administration. Mr. Speaker, an 8% increase in public servant. The record must show, Mr. Speaker, that in 3 budgets post-2020, the People's Progressive Party would have increased public servant salary by $38 billion. Now, juxtapose that against 5 years in the PNC, when they would have increased public servant salary by $27 billion. 78%, Mr. Speaker, on a small amount doesn't mean much. If you increase 78% on $1, it's a small amount. And that is why I call numbers so that we can have an appreciation. In 3 budgets, we increased it by $38 billion. The PNC took 5 years to increase it by $27 billion. And Mr. Speaker, next year is going to be better. The people can rest assured about that. Mr. Speaker, I spoke about this issue of the healthy diet. This was a study that was done by the UN, and the report is called The State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World. And this is not now. This is not now. Mr. Speaker, the issue of co-op. The Honorable Member, Madam Desir, would have put it over as if the Honorable Minister Joseph Hamilton was going after co-op for the dissolution of co-op. He merely said that there are co-ops existing that are not functioning, and they have acres of land tied up either in a one-man show or in a family operation, depriving the genuine members of these different co-ops the right to own or beneficially occupy these lands. And there's nothing racial about that, Mr. Speaker. There are a number of co-ops in this country that are mixed, very mixed. Some of them dominated by one race over the other. A very good co-op is the Virgin Nubian Rice Co-op. And that co-op is functioning, and sometimes it needs help along the way. And I think the minister was raising this issue primarily from the position that this government is prepared to make budgetary allocation to assist in providing better services for co-ops. Mr. Speaker, this is what was said. Mr. Speaker, another issue we have to address also is this matter that was raised by a number of speakers, including member of the Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Mike Paul, Honorable Member, I think, Mr. Jones, also raised this matter of the Public Accounts Committee. And Mr. Speaker, what they said about the Public Accounts Committee is that we had changed the quorum. Mr. Speaker, in this National Assembly here, every year we change laws, we update laws, we bring legislation to make our legal agenda modern and to address new issues. A lot of these laws are old and outdated, need updating. We even had a recent discussion on the hemp legislation. And democracy mustn't be for the opposition, Mr. Speaker. Democracy got to be for the government also. There must be democracy for all of us. And if there is a change in the quorum, and I don't know why the members of the opposition are complaining by something which they perceive to benefit the government, and then they are saying they will be the government. They should lie low if they will be in the government because it will benefit them. So, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the change on the quorum has nothing to do with any ulterior motive by the government. It has nothing to do with that. And members argue about this issue of scrutiny. That is exactly the point that I want to make, Mr. Speaker. Scrutiny. The opposition, members of the opposition, wants to avoid scrutiny of that period post-December 2018. And we want to ensure that the people of this country and people in the opposition camp understand fully what happened from that period, December 2018, to the period 2020. And that is why we're going to examine the Auditor General account year after year so that we can bring to the attention of our people what transpired during that period. Now, the point was made, Mr. Speaker, that the Auditor General report is laid in Parliament by September of the preceding year. Members of the opposition don't need the Public Accounts Committee to bring what is in the Auditor General report to the attention of the public. From day one, they can go out there and state what is in the Auditor General report.
Honorable member, let me state here you need an extension.
I would like to ask that the honorable member be given another 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable member, 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Madam Chief Whip. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I listened attentively to the honorable member, Mr. Jones, when he made his presentation. And Mr. Jones sought to lecture to this government here about issues of good governance. And he sounded very good, like a born-again person. And I was taken in by his presentation. And so I started thinking about what Mr. Jones is saying, and I realized that Mr. Jones has his own agenda. Because in this issue of good governance, Mr. Jones raised the issue of the Region 3 synthetic track, for example, and put it over to this House as if the establishment of the synthetic track in Region 3 is an act of discrimination. Mr. Speaker, what is wrong with people of Region 3? Mr. Jones went on to say that most athletes come from Region 4 and Region 10, and why you put it in Region 3? Shouldn't we have athletes in Region 3? Region 4 is blessed with a lot of sports infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, we have the stadium right here. We have the gymnasium. We have Cliff Anderson Sports Hall. We have the pool, state of the pool right across here. We have a racket center that provides for squash, for lawn tennis. All these facilities are in Region 4. And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I will tell Mr. Jones, honorable member, that good governance is about diversifying your facilities to all the regions and not to concentrate it in one region, which will be discriminatory. And that we should. I mean, Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Jones should have practiced good governance when he was in the government, because I remember issues that are clearly not demonstrating aspects of good governance associated with ownership of a piece of land next to a health center where it was purported, right? And I don't think the president at that time was aware that Mr. Jones would have gotten title. Good governance would have dictated that we go through the proper process and you do the survey and ensure the boundaries don't take over half of the health center and the lands and surveys. So, yeah, but they didn't give you the health center. So and then there were issues of good governance over the allocation of funds from the Sustainable Livelihood and Entrepreneurial Development Initiative. I think this initiative was supposed to be funding community-based projects in areas of agriculture, apiculture, value-added, ICT, tourism, targeting the vulnerable and the disadvantaged. You know, not to be used, I can tell you with all assurance that that is exactly what that is being used now for the proper purposes. So, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about good governance, we must not forget the past and what we used to practice. And if we want to make recommendation, we must make recommendation, take into consideration what we did, and apologize to our people for the wrongs that we would have done, whether willingly, knowingly, or unknowingly. And then move on, and then come and make recommendation to the government on how we can move forward. Mr. Speaker, the issue on what the president said. The president, when he spoke, the honorable member raised this issue about 20%. The honorable member was not clear whether the president spoke about a time frame, whether the president was speaking about a 20% on the current allocation, or whether the president was speaking about 20% of the budget. All these are very unclear in the honorable member's presentation. And what we are certain about is that year after year, more and more money will be going towards education. Right now, education, Mr. Speaker, is 94, I think education is $94.4 billion of a just over $700 billion allocation. Mr. Speaker, that is a huge chunk of the budget. I will be the first to admit it's not enough. It's a work in progress. Wages and salary is $107 billion, Mr. Speaker. $107 billion of a $781 billion budget. It is not a small chunk of the overall budget by any means. Mr. Speaker, disposable income, I want to touch briefly on that before I yield the floor, sir, with your permission. Just to say that salary adjustment alone will see the realization of $3 billion more disposable income for people. Income tax threshold, moving from 75,000 to 85,000. That will be releasing a total of $3.3 billion to taxpayers and taking 12,000 people out of the tax-paying bracket. Mr. Speaker, the We Care program, all these are geared towards helping our people in terms of disposable income. $8.6 billion going towards parents and the school-age children. Mr. Speaker, I want to close, sound prematurely, but I don't want to go beyond my time, but I want to close this evening, Mr. Speaker, by saying that Budget 2023 is visionary, it's well constructed, it takes into consideration the interests of every single Guyanese, it is addressing our immediate problems, and it is building a platform for tomorrow, for prosperity, for every single Guyanese as we seek to make the one Guyana a reality. I have no hesitation in commending this budget to all members. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Member, Mr. Hemraj Rajkumar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to the budget speech presented to this August House by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Ashni Singh, on the 16th of January, 2023, under the theme, Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow. The 2023 budget is touted to be the budget that addresses immediate needs of our citizens, while at the same time investing in the future. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 national budget, amounting to $781.9 billion, is the largest budget in our history. This is no surprise. We expect that this year's budget would be larger than last year's, since we are accustomed to have budgets larger than the preceding year. And of course, we have the revenue from oil amounting to $208.9 billion, and also the sum of $31.3 billion from the sale of carbon credits to help finance our spending in 2023. We are told that Guyana's economy is the fastest growing economy in the world, with the contribution from oil. Mr. Speaker, the Guyanese people had great expectations. They wanted comfortable and happy life for themselves and family. People were optimistic. They were hopeful, believing that we would all enjoy in some significant way the bounty of our vast resources. Budget 2023 is a far cry from what our people expected. It has no realistic plan to improve the lives of our ordinary citizens. It disclosed government's uncaring and unconscionable attitude toward the poor and the vulnerable. The ordinary Guyanese people are disappointed. The year 2022 was challenging. The citizens of Guyana were faced with an increasingly high cost of living. By the end of 2022, the cost of food, both imported and locally produced, would have more than doubled. Transportation costs in some cases were increased by more than 50%. To counter this steep increase in cost of living, the government in November 2022 announced an unconscionable and miserly 8% increase in salaries to public servants to be paid retroactively in December. Mr. Speaker, this is 1 year after the passing of the 2022 budget. In a country with the fastest growing economy and a country which will receive billions in oil revenue, our workers are made to endure the sufferings for 1 whole year before given a meagerly increase in salary. This is how our government demonstrated care for our hardworking people. Mr. Speaker, as I examined the presentation of Budget 2023 by the Honorable Minister, I found that this budget is far from what it purported to be. No realistic plan to improve the lives of our citizens and building prosperity for tomorrow. I have found that there is hardly anything substantial for the ordinary Guyanese citizens to help improve their livelihood and to create wealth for themselves. It has more emphasis on promoting private sector investment. This budget, like the previous budget, is again private sector oriented, with little support for the poor and the vulnerable in these times of rising living expenses. Mr. Speaker, the inevitable increase in cost of living is expected to continue in 2023. The government has recognized this and has made provision in Budget 2023 under the head Easing Cost of Living. Mr. Speaker, government intends to reduce excise tax on petroleum products by 10% to zero to help reduce the cost of living. Mr. Speaker, this measure will surely reduce the price of fuel. But will this measure benefit the consumers? Will the ordinary man pay less for transportation? As we saw in 2022, the reduction of the excise tax on fuel did not prevent the increase in cost of public transportation. Government must find ways to ensure that the reduction of the excise tax on fuel benefits the ordinary citizens. The reduction in freight charges is another measure which the government intends to use in 2023 to ease the cost of living, as was done in 2022. However, despite subsidizing the freight charges on imported goods, there were hardly any reduction in the price paid by the consumers. What is also noted, Mr. Speaker, and which I strongly recommend, is that government should reduce or subsidize the cost of freight for vehicles transporting local produce across the Borbridge and Demerara bridges, as well as on the transport and harvest ferries. This will surely reduce the costs reaching the consumer. Mr. Speaker, to cushion the rising cost of living, government intends to continue with the part-time job program, which is started in 2022. Person will work for 10 days per month and receive $40,000 for their 10 days job. This year, Mr. Speaker, $10 billion were allocated in the budget to support this program with the intention of employing more persons. Mr. Speaker, is this how the government intends to create jobs for our citizens? Or is it a way of rewarding their supporters? Mr. Speaker, I did some investigation into these workers. There's no job description. Most of the time, they have nothing to do. They make no contribution to the National Insurance Scheme, Mr. Speaker. I have no doubt that this is an ingenious way of using state resources to reward the supporters of this government. More than 90% of the persons employed under this program are supporters of the PVP. Mr. Speaker, I have no issue with government spending to provide jobs for poor and vulnerable in an attempt to create better living conditions, but it must be inclusive. No one should be marginalized because of his political persuasion or ethnicity. In 2023, let us see the One Guyana principle being applied. With the $10 billion allocated under this program, I call on the government to select persons because they are citizens of Guyana and are equally entitled to benefit from all government programs. They must not be rejected because of their political alliance. The Honorable Minister announced that government again this year has set aside the sum of $5 billion for additional cost of living measures to be determined from the ongoing community engagement. There are no clear indication again, Mr. Speaker, as to what this sum would be used for. This is another source of state fund available to the government to give their supporters under the guise of grants. $5 billion in the hands of government to do as it please and no question asked. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister has announced that this year, the monthly public assistance will be increased from $14,000 to $16,000, an increase of $2,000. Old age pension will be increased from $28,000 to $33,000, an increase of $5,000. A far cry from the $50,000 that was promised by this government in their campaign. Mr. Speaker, the aged and the vulnerable will accept the crumbs thrown to them by this government because they have no alternative. But in a country with the fastest growing economy, with billions received from oil, is this the way we show gratitude to the elderly and care for the vulnerable? An increase of $5,000 in these times of high cost of living will have little or no impact on the life of these persons. Mr. Speaker, government should have considered giving the elderly and the vulnerable much more than was announced. Mr. Speaker, we ought to have done better for elderly and the poor in these times of high cost of basic food items, where the cost of basic food items has skyrocketed. We have the resources and we can afford it. Let's do it. The Honorable Minister has announced this year that income tax threshold has been increased from $75,000 to $85,000, a mere $10,000. Mr. Speaker, income tax threshold should have been increased to $100,000 to have a significant impact. If my calculations are correct, the saving resulting from the present measure would be between $2,500 to $2,800 per month. How effective would this be on the to counter the rising food prices. Mr. Speaker, what about the person earning $225,000 per month and above? Why were they not considered for income tax relief? Government should have revised the calculation to tax charge of income at a rate of 25% on the first $170,000 per month, and thereafter 30% on the remaining sum, instead of the present 28% and 40% as currently used. Mr. Speaker, with a budget of $781.9 billion, every single Guyanese ought to benefit from these measures. Mr. Speaker, one of the effective ways of cushioning the effect of rising costs of living is the reduction of the value-added tax. Citizens over the years have been calling on government to reduce VAT. The APNE plus AFT government fulfilled its promise made to the Guyanese public when VAT was reduced from 16% to 14%. At that time, AFC government was not fortunate enough to have the proceeds of oil to support its decision to reduce VAT. But it was done knowing it will benefit our citizens. Today, Mr. Speaker, despite the continuing rise of cost of living and the expected exponential increase in earning from oil, this government has failed to consider reducing VAT by even 1%. Mr. Speaker, reducing VAT by 2% would have made a significant impact in increasing easing the burden currently faced by our citizens. With our economy growing at a very fast rate from proceeds from both oil and non-oil sector, there should have been no hesitation by this government to reduce VAT by at least 2%. University students, Mr. Speaker, and potential university students are again disappointed. They are still waiting for the promise made to them by this government to make university education free. Again, Mr. Speaker, university students are finding it's very challenging to meet the cost of their education. The Honorable Minister has announced that in 2023, the government will spend $1.8 billion to provide free education for students under the Gold Scholarship Program. Nothing is wrong with this, Mr. Speaker. It is a good thing to assist students to educate themselves. But when will the Honorable Minister explain to the university students why they were not considered for free education again this year? Will the Minister explain to these students why they were not even considered for a reduction in the cost of their fees? Are UD students not equally entitled to free education as the Gold student? Explain to us, Mr. Minister. We want answers. Mr. Speaker, it is very inconsiderate for this government for 4 years to deny students of our university free education. It's time to give our students what they were promised and what they deserve. We can afford it. Let us assist our young people to prepare themselves for the bright future we all anticipated. Mr. Speaker, we were told that UD students are recipients of PSM scholarships by the Honorable Minister Parag. What I want to know is it all university students receiving PSM scholarships? I know it's not so. So let us consider those students that has to pay. Mr. Speaker, last year during my budget speech, I had raised the issue of government providing dialysis service on the executive coast for patients in need of dialysis. Today, Saudi Regional Hospital is offering the service to patients at a cost of $10,000 per session. This is possible through the collaboration between government and a private firm. The patients are grateful for this intervention, but were hoping that government would have provided this service free of cost. They are now calling, Mr. Speaker, for at least 2 sessions per week to be free, and if it's possible, to remove the $600,000 grant per year. Because $10,000 would also give us 1 session per week. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to raise some issues facing the citizens of Region 2. In my speech on Budget 2022, I had raised the issue of resident living between Queenstown and Supernam on the Essequibo Coast, complaining bitterly about the quality of water supplied by the GWI I highlighted that the water supplied to this part of the coast is untreated and had high iron content. Nothing has been done to improve this situation to date. However, I have noted that the Honorable Minister has disclosed that in 2023, advanced work on the construction of a water treatment plant on the Niming, Charity and Watmahawk. We in the region anxiously await the early commissioning of these facilities and to receive an improved quality of water provided to us. We deserve this and it's long overdue.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We await an extension for you. Honourable Member, Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much, Comrade Speaker. Comrade Speaker, I ask that the Honourable Member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Member, Mr. Jones. Honourable Member, you may continue. Mike.
Mr. Speaker, in 2022, the people in Region 2 were promised the establishment of an industrial estate on the Niming Essequibo Coast. We are now told, nothing was done in 2022 towards this project. However, we are now told that the work will commence in 2023 for the establishment of the industrial estate. We are awaiting the early completion of this project and anticipate the building of a business incubator to assist in the development of a small entrepreneur in our region. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, Region 2 was promised a new modern regional hospital at Guyana. This year, we learned that it will be built at Lima. We hope that the construction of this facility will not commence in the near future, will be commenced in the near future. Mr. Speaker, last year I had indicated to this House that the main road from Charity to Supernam has started to deteriorate and call on government to effect remedial work. To date, little or no work has been done to correct this situation. Mr. Speaker, the cracks that were seen last year have graduated the potholes. I am again calling on government to take steps to repair our road before it gets worse. Mr. Speaker, I cannot conclude without saying something about our rice industry. Rice, as we all know, is the background of Region 2. Many farmers suffered tremendously from the excessively heavy rainfall experienced in 2022. Many farmers along the coast were unable to reap their crop. They suffered tremendous financial loss and are at the verge of bankruptcy. These rice farmers are calling for government for financial help. One farmer informed me that the concerns were reported to the GRDB, but to date, they have not received any response. Mr. Speaker, farmers along the coast have complained. Mr. Speaker, farmers along the coast have complained that access dam leading to the backlands are in deplorable state. Dams at Marais Lodge, Golden Fleece, Reliance, Marais Delight, and Better Success, to name a few areas that need attention. The farmers are calling on government to repair these dams so that they can have easy access to their fields. Mr. Speaker, all is not well with rice in Essequibo. The high cost of input compared to the price received for a bag of paddy is of great concern to the farmers. Farmers appreciate the effort made to secure new markets. The farmers are faced with high cost of production, are calling for an increase in the price for a bag of paddy. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to call on government to provide some financial assistance to the farmers of Region 2. Just as the cash grants were made available to the sugar workers and the fisher folks, it is time to provide some financial assistance to the struggling rice farmers in Region 2. There is the money is available, let us use it. Essequibo rice farmers are in need, let's support them now. Mr. Speaker, this $781.9 billion budget presented this year is indeed the largest budget presented in our history. It has no realistic plan of improving the well-being of our citizens. It has failed to bridge the gap between the poor and the rich. Our citizens are disappointed. They expect much more than the crumbs thrown to them. The fastest growing economy and revenue received from oil, government could have done much more to improve the lives of our citizens. This budget may have a plan for infrastructure development for the future,
but it sure lacks the capacity to create wealth and improve the lives of our ordinary people today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Our final contribution for this evening is the Honorable Member, Dr. Tandika Smith. Honorable Member, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I rise to give my support to Budget 2023, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the Honorable Minister Dr. Ashley Singh, Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, and his hard-working team for preparing yet another historic budget. A budget that will definitely continue to solidify the foundation of work set by the PPC government when we took office in late 2020, and one that will definitely lead us to prosperity. Mr. Speaker, many may ask, what is in this budget for me, or how would my family and I benefit? Well, the answer is simple, because like every budget presented to this honorable House under the PPC government, growth and development of our country and its people always take precedence. Mr. Speaker, if we are to do a comparison of the state of affairs of our country from the year 2015 to 2020 and August 2020 to 2023, we would have a clear understanding of where we were, what we have accomplished so far, and where we are heading. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me to not remind my fellow Guyanese brothers and sisters of the turmoil and neglect we face as a nation under the APNU AFC administration, now main opposition. Mr. Speaker, they took away the Because We Care cash grant from our school children. Over 7,000 sugar workers were fired. They increased their salaries from 50 to more or less 100%. They placed VAT on water and electricity, building materials, fertilizers, VAT on data, medical supplies, and over 200 food items. They fired over 2,000 Amerindian CSOs, placing our Amerindian brothers and sisters on the breadline. Additionally, we saw in the 2020 budget, the now main opposition also voted against an 800 million budget for indigenous development. This, Mr. Speaker, are some of the clear indications that even in opposition, there are a group of persons who will always be against development in our country. Mr. Speaker, as if this was not enough, even our very rights to elect a government of our choice came under attack as we witnessed the attempt to alter the course of the March 2nd, 2020 elections. Nevertheless, we remain valiant, and our never-ending resilience will only continue to build us stronger together. Mr. Speaker, as time would not permit me to examine all that which we have accomplished thus far as a government since we took office in 2020, indeed there is much to be proud of and even more to look forward to. Already we have seen the Because We Care cash grant reinstated, and this year it has increased to $35,000 per school child. The school uniform grant has now increased to $5,000, which will see our children in both the public and private schools receiving a total of $40,000. Mr. Speaker, our senior citizens of pensionable age can now enjoy an increase of their old age pension, along with VAT-free water and electricity. Mr. Speaker, we continue to see that over 200 food items
VAT were removed from over 200 food items, and Guyanese are now able to enjoy same. So far, Mr. Speaker, we have rehired a total of 1,479 sugar workers and have assisted several sugar workers with a total of $250,000 cash grant. Mr. Speaker, we have also seen the removal of VAT from building materials, mining equipment, medical supplies, among other amenities. And of course, Mr. Speaker, this has removed the heavy tax burden placed upon the shoulders of Guyanese citizens and is now able to put more money in the pockets of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, earlier we heard the honorable member, Mr. Cox, mention that Amerindians are not offered or not afforded any sort of development and are left in the struggle. But Mr. Speaker, if we examine the development so far that our Amerindian brothers and sisters have received and that which they will be receiving for 2023, Mr. Speaker, so far, as a result of a caring PPC government, my fellow Amerindian brothers and sisters are now able to enjoy and experience true development provided by our government in various sectors, as they can now be able to enjoy new opportunities and be able to give back to their communities by developing new skills through the CSO program. Over 400 indigenous youths from hinterland communities were able to enjoy various opportunities. Our indigenous communities will be able to benefit from the construction of ICT hubs. Our youth will be able to benefit from training in tourism and hospitality, business development, garment construction, just to name a few. Mr. Speaker, in the area of health, this year's budget caters for the construction of 4 telemedicine centers in regions 1, 7, 8, and 9. Now, this will allow patients to be reviewed and managed in real time and provide quality diagnosis and treatment, thus boosting our indigenous remote communities with modern health care. Mr. Speaker, a total of $237 million will go towards the upgrade of the Karasbai, Anai, and Sand Creek health centers. And this will see these centers equipped with radiology and laboratory services, which will, of course, afford residents access to much-deserved quality and standard health care. Mr. Speaker, our health facilities in the hinterland were also able to benefit from the injection of human resources, and for the very first time, residents in Suriname, Whitewater, and Monkey Mountain will be able to have access to a resident doctor within their respective communities. Mr. Speaker, so far communities such as Maruka and Mabaruma will benefit from maternal waiting homes. This is something that I must say is commendable, and our indigenous mothers will definitely benefit significantly from this. Mr. Speaker, other initiatives such as one that will aim to ensure expectant mothers in the hinterland regions to have at least one ultrasound and be assessed at least once by an obstetrician during her pregnancy. Mr. Speaker, we will also see the training of 29 birth attendants in regions 1 and 9, and this will also be a major contribution to these categories of patients. Mr. Speaker, as I now turn my attention to Region 3, it is clear from all indications that this region is well on its way on becoming one of Guyana's main economic hubs. Mr. Speaker, commuters will now be able to benefit from a new 4-lane bridge across the Demerara River, and this will see persons saving time and the ease of the heavy traffic burden experienced on a daily basis. Further, Mr. Speaker, the Schooner to Crane Highway will also be a major investment, as residents will be able to now afforded the option of easier access to and from the Demerara Harbor Bridge. Mr. Speaker, residents of Region 3 have benefited thus far from numerous roads built within various communities such as Parika, Sela, Tushin, Parfait, Harmony, just to name a few. Mr. Speaker, also in keeping with our manifesto promise of allotting 50,000 house lots within the first term in office, over 2,000 residents are now able to enjoy access to house lots and will be able to fulfill their dreams of owning their own home. Mr. Speaker, residents of Wakenham are now benefiting from potable water, as just last August of 2022, a new well was commissioned by His Excellency President Irfan Ali, which will also see other communities in Region 3 benefit from similar development. Mr. Speaker, when we took office in 2020, the health sector countrywide was in a state of despair. Today, as we continue to rebuild and restore quality health care to our citizens, residents of Region 3 will be beneficiaries of a new hospital that is expected to be constructed in the Dekendron area. Already 30 of the 36 health centers and health posts within the region have benefited from infrastructural upgrades, which will also see and allow easier access to patient care. Mr. Speaker, in the height of the rising COVID-19 cases in 2021, the Accident and Emergency Department at the West Demara Regional Hospital was repurposed to a COVID-19 unit, and this being the second unit of this nature in the country, to the tune of 80 million Guyana dollars. Mr. Speaker, as our government continues on a robust COVID-19 vaccination program, a total of 69,342 persons have so far received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. A total of 54,173 persons have received their second dose, while 10,655 persons have received their first booster. Mr. Speaker, our health caregivers now have access to sufficient PPEs as compared to what we received under the coalition government at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, as we continue on the pathway to transformative developments, our secondary school children in Region 3 are now enjoying a state-of-the-art $1 billion secondary school at the Parfait Harmony area. And this being the first facility to be completed under the Guyana Secondary Education Improvement, a government initiative aimed at achieving universal education. Mr. Speaker, so far, a total of 1,429 young people have benefited from the Gold Scholarship, an ongoing program that will see at least 20,000 persons accessing advanced tertiary education. Mr. Speaker, our children will continue to benefit from the school feeding programs and also be able to access new and improved infrastructures in various communities such as Tushin and Wakenham. Mr. Speaker, as time may be against me, and I may not be able to further dissect into the 2023 budget, I can assure my fellow Guyanese that your future, your children and your grandchildren's future will continue to be safe and secured under the PPPC government. I therefore commend Budget 2023 to be passed in this honorable House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, this concludes our business for today. It's a good time to take the adjournment until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Honorable Member, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Honorable Acting Prime Minister,
Sir,
Nandla.
I ask that we adjourn, sir, the Assembly until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Thank you, honorable members. The Assembly stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m.